I want to welcome everybody back to our symposium. And I'm trying to stand so that you can see me as well. We are so happy that you're here with us. Virtually, of course, we wish that we had the pleasure of seeing you in person, but it made me really happy to see how many people were able to visit with you just a few minutes ago before we came back to reconvene a little bit more formally. I am delighted to have the opportunity to introduce Anne Lauterbach, who will kick off the second session of presentations this afternoon. I know that for many of you, Anne Lauterbach requires no introduction at all, but I will just mention briefly that she is, of course, a professor at Bard College, where she is Ruth and David Schwab Professor of Languages and Literature. She also served as co-chair of writing for the MFA program between 1992 and 2022. She is a recipient of a Guggenheim Fellowship and a MacArthur Fellowship. I will leave it at that. There is so much more to be said, and perhaps for our present purposes, Anne, we are so grateful that you are among the very distinguished contributors to our wonderful catalog. We are delighted to have you here as a poet and a fellow traveler with Mina Loy. Thank you so much.
Can you hear me now?
Oh,
Yes, we can.
Yep. Yeah. Hi, everybody. I'm delighted to be with you. I'm really sad not to be physically with you. I tried very hard to get there, but the various demons of the world prevented me. I'm going to read you a short piece. There are no illustrations. I hope that's okay. You can look at the books behind me. So I'll begin. Thank you. Is Jennifer there? Jennifer Gross, is she there? Oh, she was waiting before. Thank you, Jennifer, for inviting me in the first place to contribute to new thinking about Mina Loy as poet and artist. Thank you, Roger Conover, for making that invitation irresistible by showing me some of your amazing collection of her work, as well as your heroic and sustaining commitment to her poetry. Thank you, Anne Goodyear, for the invitation to say a few words today and for your great graciousness. I'm very sad, as I said, not to be there in person. I want to say to the audience that I don't seem to have a scholarly bone in my brain. I am a poet who likes to think and write about art and poetry. So this talk is made mainly of some outtakes from my essay in the catalog, which was called Mina Loy, Art of the Unbeautiful True. I'm going to speak mainly about her poetics, but much of what is true about her poems is also true about her visual work. And I hope everything I say isn't absolutely stuff that everything you already know. I apologize if that's the case. One lives in a kind of strange, I don't know what the strange thing is. I guess one lives in strangeness. Before I began my journey with Mina Loy, I had for some time been thinking or meditating or wondering about the distinction between the real and the true, two ideas that seem to be increasingly conflated in our world of fakes and lies. I was considering if art was one way in which humans negotiated between them. And in those ruminations, the notion of the beautiful offered itself. What did the beautiful have to do with the distinction between and possible unification of the real and the true? The first thing that people said and still say about Mina Loy is that she was beautiful. There are many images that attest to this fact, but what I noticed, and almost anyone who reads her poems would quickly notice, that they were deliberately unbeautiful by any conventional standards, and even in the roiling aesthetics of early modernism. Pound had demanded that poetry should make it new, and Victor Shklovsky had added that art's job is to render the familiar strange. But for Mina Loy, strangeness was inevitable. Even among the cohort of peripatetic, she moved more frequently, more restlessly, and so was more or less always estranged. Beyond that fact, or perhaps because of it, she became attentive to a whole world of strangers, those who did not belong, who were odd outside, misfits, ill, broken, and forgotten. Roger has talked about this. It's not an unfamiliar piece of knowledge about her. This real world was distinctly unbeautiful, and so it seemed to me that Loy made it her business to make art from the unbeautiful real and deliver it into what we understand to be true. The opening poem in the show's beautiful catalog, Apology of Genius from 1922, gives us a lexicon of virulent words, words we do not even now expect to find in a poem. Here's a list: ostracized, wastes, lepers, diseased, sores, perturbing, fools, mockeries, clowns, poverty, corrosion, criminal, size. These words are suspended in a kind of linguistic medium which affords neither imagistic nor narrative coherence. But toward the end of the poem, a declarative address comes forward. You may give birth to us or marry us. The chances of your flesh are not our destiny. In the raw caverns of the increate, I-N-C-R-E-A-T-E, increate, we forge the dusk of chaos in that imperious jewelry of the universe, the beautiful. The phrase, the beautiful, is set off between two dashes on its own line. And so there is a slight ambiguity as to whether the beautiful is what we forge or whether it is the imperious jewelry of the universe. My reading is it's both. Loy lets us know that the beautiful is not at hand, not near, not in the flora and fauna, nor human artifacts of the real world. Not, that is, unless we redefine what we imagine the beautiful to be. In modern poetry, which, as Roger has pointed out, is Loy's only known statement on poetics, she wrote, "This then is the secret of the new poetry. It is the direct response of the poet's mind to the modern world of varieties in which he finds himself. In each one, we can discover his particular inheritance of that world's beauty." The odd conjunction of direct response to the modern world, which echoes Pound's call for the direct treatment of the thing, with the notion of the world's beauty as an inheritance in or of the mind, gives us some hint of how for Loy there was a separation, maybe a schism, between the observed and the imagined. One senses here that beauty might indeed exist, but perhaps only as the mind's inheritance or bearing, belonging not to the modern world's varieties, but only in some other immanent region. Across her poetic work, there is an unrelenting and unflinching attention paid to the least beautiful of subjects and scenes, accompanied by the most stunningly inventive terms to accommodate them. Here are some examples. There are very many. Her long autobiographical poem, Anglo-Mongols and the Rose, includes a section titled Opposed Aesthetics. So did the Mongol girl of no man's land coerce the shy spirit of beauty from excrements and physic. This unflinching, surprising vocabulary or diction sets her work apart from all the other major poets of modernity. She made beautiful poems about ugly subjects, or rather, she found beauty in ugly subjects, some of them shocking. Quote, arrangements by rage of human rubble, the false eternal statues of the slain, until they putrefy, tossed on a pile of dead, one woman, her body hacked to utter beauty, oddly by murder, attains the absolute smile of dispossession, the marble pause before the extinct haven. That's from Photo After Pogrom. And then finally, hail to you, bad little boy, lying in bound beauty of only a broken leg. That's from Babies in Hospitals. We see in these passages that Mina Loy was going to trouble to revise our accepted ideas of where to look for beauty. She was going to make us look beyond or perhaps deeper into the surface of things. She was going to suggest that the beautiful isn't to be found in the material world at all unless we reconsider its very definition. One task of art to redefine the beautiful. This brought me to think about the strain called the grotesque, images that rupture, contest, compromise, and contradict normative expectations, and which runs all across and through cultures and eras, uncontained by such terms as surrealism, Dada, and so forth. I mention this in passing here. As I considered these contradictory apprehensions, I tried to gather what I took to be the main salient terms of her poetics. To house ambiguity, to allow for the unpredictable and volatile, to attend to unbeautiful ephemera, both human and material, to give space to leftover debris, not the great ruins of high tragedy, but the minutiae of the intimate stage, near at hand but easily overlooked. Her other impulse was toward unhoused spirits, adrift in the firmament, where she could imagine vagrant creatures floating like partial embryonic moons, butterflies and snails and hands like wings, morphing and emerging out of the murky nocturnal skies. There is no space or time, only intensity, and tame things have no immensity. That's the final stanza of There Is No Life or Death. Her poetic choices often resist easy absorption, too condensed to be free association. They verge on aphoristic statements that seem to arise from a constellated amalgam in which the normal syntactical connection between subject and object has been, if not quite sundered, then frequently kept in suspended abeyance. The reader is left in a terrain that pivots uneasily through a variety of trajectories, not unlike a futurist painting attempting to capture images of abstract force, dynamism, without a discernible object. Even her most ostensibly intimate poems can be peculiarly opaque, shards of suggestion and innuendo that rarely resolve through narrative momentum or observed imagistic clarity. The lines move in a propulsive illogic, kept alive by her attention to oral play. Propelled by synapses of sound, they are not traditionally lyrical, if by that we mean a certain music inflected with melodic sonorities that signify for many emotional subjectivity. In Loy's incommensurate materials, one feels an essential modernist tension between the abstract and the particular, but for her, these extremes produced a living, animate irresolution rather than an embrace of extended resolves found for example, in Wallace Stevens or Marianne Moore. They stay in the profound philosophical arena of the undecidable. This is not surprising. Mina Loy exemplifies a resistance to binary thinking. We could do worse than to think about the ways in which she negotiated traditional identities of gender, not only in her resistance to the social limits on women's role, but to the enduring dualities between body and mind, feeling and thought. Reading Mina Loy was for me both revelatory and instructive. It revised downward some ideas I had about the early modern avant-garde, while simultaneously reviving my belief in the necessity of art. For Loy, mundane, worldly beauty, her own included, was as transitory and expendable as it was irrelevant. Her poem's attention to the estrangements and depredations of human life, and especially in her later visual work to material waste and debris, carry for us a profound instruction we still haven't absorbed. Quite beyond the inventiveness of her formal choices, her work is evidence of what Yeats called the fascination of the difficult. But that fascination was neither detached, clinical, nor journalistic. It seemed to come from an altogether other uncharted source. Mina Loy did not reject, for lack of a better phrase, the spiritual imagination as a threat to the modern rational mind. It was, I think, her mind's inherited disposition, the necessary site and agent of transformative vision. Across both her visual and poetic work, she suggests that the beautiful isn't an aesthetic category at all, but one that adheres in acts of close attention and response, which in turn might align the real to the true. In the raw caverns of the increate, we forge the dusk of chaos in that imperious jewelry of the universe, the beautiful. Thank you.